If you're thinking about moving to the Twin Cities or anywhere in Minnesota, I'm sure you want to know about the pros and the cons of living here. So today in this video, I'm going to take you through what I believe are the cons, and then we'll move into the pros. And then at the end, stick around because I'm going to share a little personal journey of mine about moving between a couple states and why I essentially decided to stay here in the state of Minnesota. My name is Jeff Drager. I'm a real estate agent here in the state of Minnesota. If you have any needs or questions about real estate, please reach out. I'd love to help you. My contact information is in the description below. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So as I said, I'm going to start with the cons. I'm going to start with the big obvious one that everybody talks about, and that is the weather. The harsh winter, I should say. The winters can get, 20, 30 below zero. If you've never experienced that, it's pretty extreme. Your nostrils can freeze up, and it's crazy. So there are times when we get very, very cold. Ironically, right now it's in February and we're still in the 30s and 40s. But usually there's tons of snow on the ground, icy roads, car accidents, freezing rain, all of those things. We definitely get all of those. And so another thing that you may not be aware of if you've never lived in a climate like this is some of the things that can happen with your house. For instance, if you forget to shut your water supply off to the spigot outside, you may end up with some busted pipes and even a flooded basement. Or something that I've experienced that, and I've also experienced your furnace going out in the middle of winter. And so obviously if it's 10 or 20 below zero outside, that's a pretty serious thing. So you always want to make sure that you stay keeping an eye on your furnace and make sure that thing doesn't get too old, because that can be a huge problem. And then just shutting your outside water supply off is enough to usually keep you from getting any busted pipes. And sometimes in some areas when they have the power lines, if too much snow gets stacked up on them and they go down, you may be without power for, depending on how bad the storm is, it may be a day, it could be a couple days. A lot of people have a generator, but it's just something to keep in mind that you may have never experienced before. Again, with the snow, if you've never experienced it, you may be spending an hour in the morning shoveling. You may walk out your front steps and fall and really hurt yourself. So lots of things to keep in mind with the snow. The big obvious one, got that out of the way. So the second thing I want to say on here about the cons is the taxes in Minnesota tend to be quite a bit higher than a lot of other places. As of right now, the last time I checked, we're about the 5th highest in the nation with income taxes, and our property taxes and all taxes all around are just pretty much higher than a lot of the nation. So that's something to keep in mind if you have a high paying job or you just don't want to pay taxes. Some of those things may be a factor in deciding to live in Minnesota. Then moving on to another one that a lot of people like to complain about here is traffic. So we have a nice kind of gridded out highway system, but our downtown area, we have Minneapolis and St. Paul right next to each other. And then you have some pretty populated suburbs right around the cities. So, anytime during rush hour, I would say 7 to 9 in the morning or like 3 to 6 in the afternoon. If you're working anywhere near the city, you're definitely going to be sitting in some traffic. And, so you always got to plan for that in your day. And it can be kind of a drag if you're driving through that every day, for sure. Lastly, on the traffic part, one thing that everybody complains about here that I need to make sure I mention is some of the roads and specifically the potholes. There are some serious potholes throughout the Twin Cities. The reason for that, it's kind of ironic being that I just said we have high taxes, but the reason for that is that the ground freezes and unthaws. And so every year you have tons of road construction and tons of roads that just have potholes and could possibly break your rim on your car, because these things are huge. The ground freezing and unthawing and moving basically buckles some of those roads, and it can get pretty serious or pretty dangerous, or at least just very annoying. So that's something to keep in mind. And then lastly, we have pretty much all the weather besides like earthquakes. I would say we're right at the top of tornado alley. So we definitely get some, crazy thunderstorms, tornadoes. I haven't personally, knock on wood, seen a tornado in my life, but I've definitely been close to some of them and kind of been on the outskirts where trees are getting blown over and things like that still. But they're definitely something that happens here. And then aside from the harsh winters, we have beautiful, nice green summers, but it can get very humid and hot sometimes. And with that humid weather comes mosquitoes. And that is, depending on where you are, if you're near like a wetland or something, mosquitoes are crazy sometimes. So that is definitely, something that can really suck if you're going camping or just hanging out for a campfire in a backyard. It can be pretty tough. So, with those cons out of the way, I wanted to get those out of the way first because I truly love the Twin Cities and the whole state of Minnesota. So, let's move on to some pros of living in the Twin Cities. The first one that I want to touch on is the scenery. Like all around, you have two downtown metro areas with bridges that go right past, these beautiful rivers that run right through the downtown area. And at night, like I think it's the 35W bridge, when you're driving past Minneapolis, I've literally never seen a city like it. When it's all lit up, you have the river running there, and you just have this vantage point to just take in how beautiful the Twin Cities really are. Like I said, you have rivers running through there. You have all these parks that are actually all throughout the metro area and into the first ring of suburbs. So there's tons of open space, and it's just all around a beautiful city in my opinion. And then beyond the metro area, you have farm areas, you have tons of lakes, which there's also lakes right in the first ring of suburbs there. As you hear, the land of 10,000 lakes. But so you're going to have opportunities to go hunting and fishing if that's something that you're into, or just going hiking at state parks, all that kind of stuff. Minnesota really has all of that, within a pretty short distance of each other. And then moving on to the next pro on my list is the cost of living. So aside from the taxes that I mentioned, Minnesota is actually 3% below the national average for the cost of living. So moving on right into my next one, they kind of go hand in hand, is a robust job market. We have all your different sorts of industries, from farming and agriculture, tech stuff, service industry, and we also have Fortune 500 companies like 3M and Target, the health partners. So we have a lot of that, and being that we have a low cost of living, the average house here is around the low 300,000, 303, I believe it's at right now. So being that there's plenty of job opportunities and lots of high paying jobs and a fairly low cost of living, that's a huge factor for people that are thinking of moving here. And then moving into the next one I have here on my list is the 4 distinct seasons. The reason I think 4 distinct seasons is a pro is because if you live somewhere where it's just hot all the time or just cold all the time, you don't really get any sense of this new feeling. What I mean by that is, if you suffer, for some people like snow sports, they're great. But if you don't, or you just don't like the little bit less sunlight and whatnot through the winter, you get into the springtime, and for me personally, it feels like a fresh new beginning every year. Everything starts to melt, the trees and plants start to bud, and it's just this new refreshed feeling every year. And then you get into summer, you have all the summer sports you could imagine. There's lakes everywhere. There's tons of bike trails in the Twin Cities. You got all this stuff going on that you can enjoy, and just nice warm summers. And then from there you get into fall, which, as the leaves turn, if you've never been in a place that has the seasons, there's tons of people that love to just go driving through the countryside, because the leaves really just create this beautiful landscape all through the fall and then back into the winter. And the winter, I know I've had a lot of things to say about the winter, but the winter can actually be really fun and awesome, especially if you have kids or you're young at heart and you like to do some activities. My daughters love to go sledding, skiing, snowboarding. I don't own a snowmobile, but there's tons of people in the state of Minnesota and surrounding states that love to go snowmobiling. It's a huge thing around here. And then just aside from that, just getting out in that crisp cold, maybe you like to go ice fishing or snowshoeing. Those can all be really fun ways to stay active during the winter and really just enjoy what Mother Nature has to offer in this climate, because icicles hanging off of trees and stuff, it's all something that's actually really beautiful if you can bundle up and get out there and enjoy it. And then lastly on my list, I wanted to go into the thriving food, arts, and music scene that's here in the Twin Cities. So as everybody knows, Prince came from the Twin Cities. So you know about First Avenue, but aside from that, and Atmosphere is another huge, hip hop group that came out of Minneapolis. But aside from those people that are more well known, there's tons of local artists in every genre. There's tons of small little music venues, which just makes it a really fun place to go out and enjoy music. And then as far as food and drinks, there are all sorts of restaurants from every different ethnic group that you could imagine. And then there's breweries like popping up everywhere. So going out and finding something good to eat, music to watch, and some cool craft beers is very easy in the Twin Cities because it's really popping up everywhere. And then as far as the arts, there's a few museums, there's a bunch of theaters. It really has a thriving, I mean, theater scene. Anything that you may be into on the art side, Minneapolis definitely has it. And so it definitely has a wide range of everything that you could want. And as I said, I wanted to share just a quick story about my childhood and going between Wisconsin and Minnesota. I have family that lives in northern Wisconsin. Love it there. It's amazing. And I went back and forth between parents, to the Twin Cities and to this smaller town. And essentially what really brought me here and brought my family here to stay is a lot of things that I talked about, but I love the mix of being able to, whether you want to live in the country or the suburbs or the inner city, they're all pretty close within each other. But you can still find, a concert to go to, a fancy restaurant to go to, a cool concert. All sorts of acts come through the Twin Cities. And then you can still find really good school districts. That's another thing I didn't really put on the list, is just amazing school districts. So you can have, in my opinion, just the best of both worlds, where you could go hunting or fishing or camping, and then you could go to a concert, at the Target Center and see a huge music star that you may not be able to see unless you're pretty close to a big city. So just the mix of all that has really made me love it here. And with that, that's all I got for the pros and cons of the Twin Cities. Again, if you have any questions, I would love to be a resource for you. Reach out, and I'll see you on the next one.